So, have you ever volunteered for something only to find out you might be in over your head? So, when I told Pastor that I would do this, he was wise not to tell me what the gospel lesson was before I volunteered. So this is a tough one. The gospel lesson for today is full of questions and paradox. We have a rich man who hears of a manager squandering his property. We don't know who provides that information to the rich man, nor do we know why it was provided. And even though those details are not central to the story, we begin wondering almost immediately. Luke, our gospel author, is believed to have been a physician, a scientist, and a Greek. Three things that all point to very factual, data-filled information. After all, it is from the Gospel of Luke we take the Christmas story, and I doubt there's ever been a Christmas pageant that didn't use Luke chapter 2. Even Linus uses it to explain the meaning of Christmas to Charlie Brown. So we trust Luke to give us facts. However, what we do find with Luke in many cases, and this is no different, that he leaves the reader to ponder things, answer our own questions through prayerful thought and consideration. And again, this parable is no different. So back to the rich man. He clearly doesn't have a human resources department to deal with because based on this one allegation, at least the one we're told about, he summons the manager and questions him. He demands an accounting of his behavior and pretty much says to him, "You're done." Now, if you notice, the manager's not given an opportunity to explain himself or even offer a defense for his actions. We can only assume that whatever information the rich man has must be firmly substantiated. So we come to another paradox. The manager knows he is in hot water, and he immediately begins to think of himself, and he panics. He's too ashamed to beg. Is this because he's known in the community and more worried about what people will think about him than making it on his own? Will his shame be too much for him to bear? He also knows that he's not strong enough to perform manual labor. So what exactly has he been doing all day? He obviously hasn't been out collecting the rich man's debts. So his decision appears to be selfishly motivated. He will curry the favor with the rich man's debtors in the hope that one or more of them will welcome him into their homes after he has lost his job. He calls them in one by one, reduces their debt significantly, and collects the payments while doing so. And then the master says he's pleased with the manager's shrewdness. And we're like, what? Why? You didn't get everything you were supposed to have. But yet, he's commended for his shrewdness. So how do we look at this in the context of our everyday lives? I am certain that any of us here have at one or more times in our lives have found that someone was misrepresenting our words or not carried out duties with which we had encumbered them. You may be a property owner and have had a renter misuse your property or not treat it the way you would treat your own property. We live in a world where seemingly generosity is even mistaken for weakness and a signal that someone might easily be taken advantage of. I am just as certain that any of us have found ourselves between a rock and a hard place and wondered, what on earth am I going to do? Possibly faced with alternatives that are not palatable and needing to find the least objectionable way out of our situation. In addition, we may have found ourselves knowing that that very first act in the story, discounting the jugs of olive oil, we know then our actions become irrevocable. It isn't as though the manager could then say to the other debtors, "Yeah, I know I gave the olive oil guy a break, but you got to pay everything you owe." Once he took that first action, he was fully committed to his course. And once you fully commit to that course, right or wrong, what begins to happen? You begin to justify or rationalize your process. You say to yourself, this will be okay because you fill in your rationalizations. Or you might say, hey, this seems to be going okay. Everything is going to work out. When the truth is, those things we tell ourselves are simply to get through the situation. I believe we have all faced situations where we do know that we are doing the best with what we have, and this is all we can do, and hope for the best. So the manager has set on his course, and on the surface, his actions seem purely selfish. However, we then have to ask, why then was he commended for the reconciling of the accounts? Was it because something was better than nothing, or was there more to his reaction? At the time, it was very common for the manager who collected debts for a property owner to collect the percentage of the debts for his own commission. Perhaps this is why it is called the parable of the dishonest manager. Perhaps he had been collecting commissions without collecting the debts. We simply don't know. However, in this crucial moment for the manager, he forgoes his own commission in order to collect the debts, thereby discounting the bills, and he hopes curry favor with both the debtors and his employer. Again, we really don't know what happened to the manager because Luke stops the story here and leaves us to ponder several things. So let's talk about the debtors, the seemingly minor characters in this parable, and see how grace applies here. Have you ever had too much month left at the end of your money? Perhaps you had to decide which bills would get paid or which would have to wait. Perhaps you have had to postpone a vacation or a desired purchase because an unexpected circumstance arose. Now imagining those situations, and imagine further, if you will, a call from the bank. And the nice bank manager says, you know what, because you have faithfully paid your account for all these years, we're going to let you skip a payment this month. Would you honestly care what the motivation of the bank manager was? Would you ask? I don't think I would. I'd be like, okay. So imagine, if you will, a debt that you owe is suddenly reduced in half. Again, would you ask why? And would you really care? In my mind, this is where grace enters, with the unexpected happy circumstance that befalls the debtors. Quite surprisingly, they received a reduction in their debt and needed no explanation. However, I am sure they rejoiced in the consequences. Perhaps they could use the remaining goods to pay other debts, or perhaps even sell them for a profit. What they did next doesn't matter to the story. What does matter is that they received this unexpected grace. Grace by nature is unexpected. We don't deserve it, and we know this. We don't earn it. It is a gift we are granted, and many times at the most unbelievable or unimagined moments. How we define grace will also depend on how we see it. When you find a parking spot close to the front of the Walmart, is that grace or is that a coincidence? I prefer to see grace in every small thing. Watching a bee take pollen from a flower, by the grace of God, I can see and watch this moment of wonder. Watching my grandson make a fishy face and hear him laugh at my laughter of him, by the grace of God, I can hear that laughter. Catching a rainbow after a powerful storm, by the grace of God, there was no damage from the storm, and the sign of his promise is in the heavens. And just this week, I had the privilege of assisting the picture process for the elementary students. First thing on Thursday morning, while we were still getting ready, one of the aides brought a special needs girl up to us, and she wanted to give us all hugs. We didn't ask for them, but she wanted to give this to them. And I can tell you that the simple act of unselfish kindness changed the tone of the morning for me. There are countless things in our day-to-day lives that are small signs of God's grace to us. Do we see them? Do we hear them? Do we fully appreciate their significance? If you do, then I believe you will see that getting that parking space is grace in action. As in the parable, we don't typically question the why. We only rejoice in the what. There is no doubt that we have encountered a close call and wondered, what if? And then been extremely thankful for the grace that we have received. But those tiny grace-filled moments that comprise our day, I believe is what Luke, through the words of Jesus, is trying to get the reader to understand and appreciate in verses 9 through 13. We are given to the conclusions that if we show trust in a little, then we will show trust in many things. If we are trusted with little things, we will be trusted with big things. Conversely, if we are dishonest a little, we will be dishonest in all. And if we cannot be trusted with a little, we cannot be trusted with all. We all know that it takes much to earn trust and very little to lose it, and then much, much more to regain that trust that has been lost. We hear this very thing echoed in these statements. And then perhaps, in one of the most well-known lessons of Scripture, often taken as standalone, we are admonished, you cannot serve two masters, God and wealth. And clearly here, Jesus is talking about material wealth. There feels like there should be a big aha moment in this parable. I feel like, however, is more a series of, oh yeah. For example, if we compare the manager's final act as a manager to knowing that our time on earth is coming to an end, how then would we behave? Oh yeah. Would we make amends? Would we settle accounts? Would we see to it that loved ones have the things we wish for them to have? Oh yeah. We know that our earthly possessions have no place or purpose in the kingdom, so should we not do good with it while we still can? Oh yeah. Or in the case of the manager, make the best of a bad situation. Did this lighten his burden, or will those acts lighten ours? Do the recipients of these final acts ponder the motives, or do they simply rejoice in the grace of the act? Further interpretation of the parable suggests that we are shown that what we are given isn't really ours, just ours to manage. God is the owner of all that we have and all that we enjoy. Therefore, what we do with it, how we manage it, is a direct reflection upon our attitude towards the grace that God has shown us through these gifts. However, these same interpretations also caution that the fruits received from filthy money can still be good fruit. For example, if that money is used to spread the gospel, no matter where that money came from, it can gather believers whose fellowship can last far beyond the material wealth. So ask yourself, how am I managing for my master? Am I collecting without returning to the master what is his? Am I just paying commissions and not returning all that I can and I could? Am I thankful for the little graces that I receive daily? Or do I discount them and take credit for my own good fortune? What would happen if I opened my heart and mind to return more, to see more, hear and appreciate more? Would I then be able to more fully return to God that which He has first given me? I wish you all the joy and discovery of unexpected grace. Amen.